All right, I'm very excited to show you today's game. So I recently published a interview with Nimloth, with him talking. Nimloth is, of course, one of the true great legends of Triple Triad Advance and TTX, I think, as well. Sorry. And he uh, did this interview. He also played a few games. He played, I believe, 3 games. It is the first time he has played in 10 years, and this was the very first game he'd played in 10 years. I think he said it was the first game he'd played in 15 years, but I do remember from time to time, maybe around 2010 11, someone named Scary Jeff, also known as Nimloth, would appear and play, like, make a new account, play a game of level 4, not play again. Uh, so this is his first time probably playing level 10 in 15 years. It's his first time playing it all in about a decade. And this was the first game he played, and he played Midas, who is a very good player. And he played what I think is just a fantastic game. And I cannot, sorry, you can hear the coughs in the background, or the sneezes, but this is just a fantastic game to have been his first game in over a decade. And Nimloth is a very worthy opponent for this game. So Nimloth had the red cards here, and clearly didn't find a starter that was setting something up, so decided to use their starter in a way that directed the game. He has 3 cards for the same corner. A882, A864, and A756 all have the most power facing out from 7. So dropping one of them in 3 is a very logical way to direct the game in a way his hand will appreciate going up to the right. And I think he identified this as the most useful card to get rid of those 3. I think A882 is generally the most powerful of these, so it makes sense to use one of these 2. Given that the hand's biggest directional weakness is left, though also down, but this is tied for its second best card to the left, while this is its 4th best card going down. Makes some sense to hold on to the left power and use the down. I think this is a logical starter, at least looking at Midas's hand. You might come up with something a bit different if you were looking how to fight specifically against Nimloth's hand. I'm not sure. It does seem that like all the natural moves in 7, right, are really well covered both this way and this way, so it would be hard to get any initiative there. So I think it's a difficult hand for Midas. Now, how will Nimloth reply? One thing I really like about this reply is that Nimloth wrote an article, 15 years ago, saying his favorite reply to corner starters is adjacent corners. He also mentioned playing next to them is very effective and gave reasons why you might move in other squares. But his favorite type is the adjacent corner. And I think he played a really elegant adjacent corner here. 7895 is set up to cover both 2 and 4. So we have this really nice recapture with the same card both ways with high numbers facing out that the hand is capable of recapturing. So that is a lot of value, but I think that's also kind of overrated value. I think a lot of people when you make a far corner move, it's often about you have stuff that, has combos on that better. When you make an adjacent corner move, I think this is not the most important thing. And I think this leads people to make adjacent corner moves that look good, but aren't so good. Because what the first turn player will often do is block the in-between square, just throwing a card here, and you have to then have a good L to set up. And the most important thing about an adjacent corner is, do you have a good L? Do you have a move like this here looks fantastic? 8678 is a threat in multiple squares. There might be other good moves here too, but that at least looks pretty comfortable. 6 also, right? Same card in 6, actually. Looks very good as well. And that one, because the one downside of this is it gives them something in 5. This gives them nothing they really want to be doing in 5. This is, of course, comboed. This is comboed by the same card. They can't go in 5. So this might have been a very strong continuation. So here, there are very good L's. And the main way to check for the L is look either what is their highest number facing down from the in-between square? Do I have a good move against that setting up an L? Or can I set up well against a capture? And usually the most testing moves they can do are the highest down or the capture. It is pretty rare for a move that isn't one of those to be the best move. Occasionally it's the case if it happens that, something has, say, a 10 down and you can set up against that, but you couldn't set up against a 9. But usually those will be the basic heuristic. Here I think this is probably the best move, as Akiyama pointed out. But it's definitely going to be a struggle for a tie for Midas. Midas, however, did not go in the in-between square. He continued to think, I want to direct the game to the right. I want to have cards that I can take back. Of course, I have this nice same wall here. It's very easy for me to take my card back. I do have multiple captures on their card. Another nice feature of Nimloth's move is it directs the game a little to the left. I only have this to capture that, so I probably want to hold on to this. And I generally want to play, if you're not going to play in the in-between square, sometimes there's big setups in 5, but the standard thing to do is play in 7 or 9, ideally with something you have a pretty easy time taking back. And this goes to the heuristics of kind of playing no combo games. Is in like no combo closed here, the best move would likely be, 7 or 9 with something you can take back very easily. And I think this is one of the formations where it plays more similarly to no combo closed than some others. And so playing a card you can just take back in one of these corners, directing the game back to the right, being able to recapture with A882 or 577A from 6. 577A being a really nice recapture because it is high out facing. Though, of course, potentially dangerous, right? Not with that card, but because if you at some point do that, you can get hit by some combos. Because Nimloth did set up a lot of combo potential. And by not blocking either 2 or 4, he's going to leave Nimloth with that combo potential for the late game. And so, while I think this move is logical, I've considered how to do this video. Do I do it like giving away, what the result's going to be, or are you coming into this video like confident Nimloth's going to win the example game I'm showing for him, so that's going to happen and I don't really need to hide it? And I decided I don't really want to hide it. I want to say that this is the losing mistake, and I think Midas had to block 2, and blocking 2 is the conventional move. He still has to be precise in which card he blocks 2 with, but I do think he has to block 2 here. This is a losing mistake, but it is, again, a logical move, right? It is a card that is easily recaptured, structurally doesn't give up any free, lock-ins, right? Going something in 2 does give in free lock-ins. Either of these moves is locking in a card, right? So it doesn't give up any free squares, necessarily, and it directs the game back over to the right, where Midas's hand still wants to be going upright. Even though we've gotten rid of 2 of our upright facing cards, our hand overall, those are still the directions we have the most net power, I believe. Yeah, if you add up the total power in each direction, I guess down shows up as slightly more than up, but down also has a maximum of 8, while up has a maximum of 10, and there's a pretty big difference there in capturing potential. So redirects the game again where he generally wants to go. And this was the position that I found so impressive from Nimloth, because he said he played a move, and then he said that another move was even better. But he felt like doing this one. And the fascinating thing is, I can click the solver, and it will tell you there are 2 winning moves in this position, and he identified both of them perfectly. And the other thing that was so impressive was he played fast. He was playing very fast. Midas was using the full 5 minutes. Nimloth was often just using like 2 of them. And so he was playing incredibly precisely, playing really quickly, and seeing all the important moves so rapidly. So that was just really cool to see. And this is, again, after a decade of not having touched this game. So just remarkable skill, remarkable thinking. Let's look at his moves and try to think how they work. The 2 moves he wanted to play were Zidane, 5/5A9, which is a card it makes sense to use if there's a valuable way to use it. Its directionality does not really face the game, and it has its 10 facing down is potentially quite powerful in either 2 or 4. And he played in 4, so I'm going to look in 2 first. This is safe. This also, Midas does actually, have a pretty clear up problem at the moment, right? The most logical move is probably here, because if we expend this card, we have very few threats. But let's refute all of them. Here, I'm just going to assume this wins. I'll have the solver tell me so we don't have to go through lines. It does indeed win. Here, I'm going to assume there is a good move in 5. Midas now has no threat in 4, has no threat going up at all. This move pops out at me, but it might not be best. This move also wins. Okay, so we got a win there. So the most logical move for Midas also, because if he plays an 8 or something, he's just conceding so many cards. You know, maybe you could imagine something like this in 8 trying to keep the threats up above, but like Nimloth can still just capture. Though maybe he doesn't want to, because that gives up a combo in 5. He can also take safety. This looks pretty good. No, that ties. Where's the win? Where's the win? So the reason we don't want to go somewhere here is because it gives up a combo or doesn't capture and is takeable. This, of course, also gives up a combo. So 6 doesn't look appealing to me. I don't see a move in 9. We got to exploit the left weakness. I think we got to go 4. Maybe this? The point is, if they take, we have this double take because of the same, and they don't have enough captures at the end. Is that it? I'll have the computer tell me. That is it. Nice. Okay, cool. Harder to win this one than I expected it to be. And our last plausible move, the one that made the most sense, was keep your A882, because that's our most powerful endgame card, and capture where we can and lock something in. Now, Nimloth has 5 here, which is likely to be decisive. But gotta do it right. My instinct... So, this has the problem that they combo us. Right? And this... From this, it didn't capture anything, we're behind. Lastly, this move, we give up our counter combo, and this doesn't look like a win. So I don't think we have a win in 5, but we don't really need to play 5. 2 is already ours. 8 makes a lot of sense to play as well. I'm just going to have the AI tell me because I don't like thinking. Yeah, there are wins in 4 and 8. So there's a win here, and we can see this combo problem. So that is comboed back, but not effectively. That is not comboed back. I switched which number was where in my head. And then the other win is in 8. And that's cool because it creates the same in 5, so it's hard for Midas not to occupy there. He doesn't have a great way to do so. And we have this important plus comboing that. And against this way, they've kept no ups. It's easy. Alright, so against all the moves that make sense, this works, and it really takes advantage of Midas having run out of up power. You know, he was very ready to use up his redundant corners and direct the game where they'd be good, but this really exploits a directional issue. That 7895 covers the A882 and the 8s so well. He's got a lot of same potential. And this wasn't even the move he played. This was the move he casually said, this is better, after, 2.5 minutes of thought. And that's just remarkably quick understanding of the game. The move he made, I think, was more complex. So I think there's a good reason to think this was the better move, because it's so clear none of Midas's options are appealing, right? This you can rule out immediately. This gives so many options in 5 that are likely to be good, and Midas has no up power, so 1 and 2 are both safe, right? This turned out to be trickier to solve, but it's very non-obvious. This is the only thing you really have to solve. And it's not obvious because the move isn't in 5, but moves in 4 and 8 are very plausible here. And it's also very clearly second turn that's playing for the win here. Second turn's cards are all really hard to approach. There's still no threat of A882 taking anything. And red cards are 2 of the 3 on board are vulnerable. And blue has multiple ways to capture them with different kinds of numbers outfacing, which makes it hard to have combos against all of them. And Yeah, it makes sense that this would be really strong. He instead plays this move, and I think this is a much more interesting move. It takes advantage of a bigger directional problem going left. It specifically says, I have this card in 1. It is hard for you to attack. You have only one way to attack it each way. And that's sort of what both these moves are about. This says, your only way to attack my card in 1, I have covered. This says, your only way to attack my card in 1, I have now set up to have covered. And indeed, this is winning. So you can't attack my card in 1. But you've now, unlike the move in 2, right, where the card in 1 is now very difficult to attack and the card in 2 is already safe, this is more complicated because it is, of course, a much more vulnerable card. But the game is it's so hard for Midas's hand to go left, this ends up working really well. For instance, he can attack it from 7. It's not even safe to 7. But I think Nimloth can just take back. Apparently this doesn't work. Yeah. A882 sweeps the hand. This loses. There's a way to lose this position. Yeah. So we gotta be careful. We can't take it immediately. So our move's probably in 2 then. I think we want to keep this threat and this threat. So we don't want to use A766. I would guess 7895. This is my guess. Nope. It says no, so I'm going to now guess this. It says yes. Okay. Why? I was thinking 7895 because if they take, we have this combo back. But the problem here is they can do something like this, and A882 is this still really effective up-down sweeper. And it just about holds. So, okay, what's the difference here? Ah. It's that we set up that same in 5 again. So so we had this line earlier where they can't go here because there's the same in 5. But we're happy to set up that same in 5 too, right? We come here, we have this big threat in 5. Now the sweeper doesn't sweep enough because our combo flipped the extra card in 7. Interesting. Interesting. Just remarkable when good players play how much synergy their cards end up having with each other. Yeah. Okay, so 7 doesn't work. I really would have expected, just like looking casually and quickly while watching, that 7 would be met by 8. But it loses. Just loses. But instead, this move in 2 keeps the threat in 8 while adding a new threat in 5. And that's just one of those things of like when you have a big threat in 1 square, often that doesn't mean you occupy it immediately. It means you go somewhere else and make more threats because they can't cover them all at once. And also, because once you use the threat, right, once you play your move here, you're suddenly like have far fewer useful moves to make on board, right? You've used the square that you were really good in, and your opponent has nothing in, right? Midas's hand doesn't have a particularly useful card for 8. Not that he really needs it, because 8 isn't, a key square to play in for him because he controls the cards around it already. But, he doesn't have a great move in 8 because everything's comboed horribly due to the same in 5. And having these more squares with threats, is a really effective feature of the position. Okay. So I thought 7 was the most obvious move for Midas to try, but it doesn't work. The most obvious is 2, but 2 doesn't work. I think the next most obvious move is 7, but 7 doesn't work. I think much like chess, in chess there's the phrase of like checks and captures first, because the idea is they are forcing moves, and so you can calculate them further, and they have a chance to be very powerful. So even if it looks bad at first, just making sure you look at all your checks and captures and gives you a real chance to find something. So I think we should follow the same principle here. What about other captures? Here, it seems like Nimloth should be able to just occupy 2. Specifically because the reason Midas can't occupy 2 is a move in 5. If Midas blocks 5, it makes sense to take 2 yourself. Which card do we want to hold on to? Well, this card's so good in 8. This card's good in 7. I'm just going to assume it's this one. And this does win. Sweet. What about the other capture? Now you've given up all the left power, so there is not a threat in 2 anymore. So we don't really need to occupy 2. We still could, but to me it seems we have 3 locked in cards. All their cards are vulnerable. This looks like it has to be winning. It is winning. Cool. And lastly, the last move in 5 was the one Midas tried, not going for the capture, but trying to confuse the position. And here, because this is the same in 8, we don't want to use it up. Because this is the best card for 6, we don't want to use it up. So Nimloth uses the other card in 5, and Midas tries to complicate. This was a good try, because, you know, if you go either card here, he gets the tie. But you can just block 6, and gets 1 back, but not enough, and Nimloth wins. So I think really nice game by Nimloth, but also, like, nice complicated move in 4. Really difficult to find a move for Midas here. It is just lost. Another move that springs to mind is potentially playable is this in 6. I assume we go in 2 and reply. Seems to make sense to use this card. And specifically, this never has play, because it is always comboed back. Ooh, that one doesn't work. Okay. Specifically, this one doesn't have play, as I knew the whole time because we just blocked 7. Didn't check for the combos. Yeah, so the thing about 4 that makes it interesting is partially that it is vulnerable to stuff. And the same idea of Midas in the game is he was willing to play this card in 5 because he knows he has that combo in 7. And he was trying to do something to set that up, and we just saw that in a potential line, right? If you go here and I go here and you take, my response is not to combo you, because then I walk into the idea Midas had in the game. So overall, I think 2 is a much cleaner win, right? 2 is the win where you can quickly see they have limited options and you have very powerful moves against each option. The thing is, again, Nimloth took like less than 3 minutes to play the much more complicated version in 4, and it is also a win. And there's just so much more going on, because you might see, we cover this looks strong. But it is risky because we've given up this combo in 7, we've given up multiple potential captures in 5, we're locking in so many fewer cards, but it is the other win, and it all does work. And the numerical vision is really good, noting kind of any card red ever ends up within 5 is weak to a combo. This is vulnerable to this. Doesn't mean we take it. Doesn't mean we take it immediately. And it's weak to this. But any move there, and the other cards both have a 7 down, which are weak to this. So just any move is setting up combos. And I think he just really had this wonderful combo vision this game, and probably just in general has this fantastic combo vision. And, like, it's a fantastic game, but even more than being a fantastic game, it's a game where he identified both of his wins, not just like, this looks promising and that also looked promising, but like named the 2 moves that were wins and no other moves. That he took so little time on his moves, and that he so soundly beat a really strong player after not having played for 10 years and not having played this level for probably like 15 years. Just really, really cool display. He ended up playing 3 games. The other 2 were ties, though I think he was the one pushing for the win in both of those games. He did miss a win against Foyer, but when I said afterwards the solver said he had a win, he was immediately like, oh, it was this move, and it was, right? Just instantly knowing which were the critical moves and seeing how they worked very, very quickly. So many people were really excited to see him back. Deli, I mentioned this in the interview part, but Deli messaged, Nimloth was someone he shaped his game after. And seeing this game, you can see why. Because it was very combative in the sense that adjacent corridors immediately interact with the opponent's starter. It was complicated in that you really had to see a lot of combo synergies to make his moves work. It was really justified. Again, I think some people make this move in 1 specifically seeing, yes, I can go 1 because it sets up this card 2 ways, and that looks pretty good. That's good enough. but it also directionally makes sense because Midas doesn't have down power. And you think, this directs the game upwards, down power doesn't matter. But the best reply in most instances to these moves in 1 is to block the in-between square. Because Midas doesn't have down power, he can't block there with a very high facing down, meaning it's really easy for Nimloth to set up an L where he threatens a double capture in 5, and control of 5 is so critical to how L's work. And so it was much harder for Midas to find the in-between move because nothing there looks appealing when it's so weak facing down. And Midas ended up making in many ways a more logical move, but a losing try as compared to something like this, which I believe is a tie. So yeah, I don't know if I have much more to say about this. It was just really cool to see a Legend of the Past back, to get to watch him play, and to see him play at a really elite level. Hope you enjoyed the game. Not sure who my next interview subject to do videos for is, but we'll be figuring it out in the near future. I have done 2 other interviews, I believe, and going to figure out what order I want to do them in, and have to find my favorite games of those players to that aren't just, I think, really good games, but games that showcase things they do that are different from what other players do, and why it's effective, which was one reason it was so fun to start with Vialva, is because he has a very individualized and unique style that I thought I could show things he's doing that other people don't do, or other people do very little. And so I want to really try and figure out where not just because the players I'm showing are very strong players, not just moves they made that were very strong, but moves they made that are something they look for more than other players look for. So, cheers.